Hi, Tim. Thank you for joining me today. I'm Zara. I'm going to be conducting your interview. I'm really excited to be talking about driving toward destiny. Before we begin, can you tell us your name and tell us something about your book and yourself?
Right. Well, nice to meet you, Zara. My name is Tim Scott, and I wrote Driving Toward Destiny. It happens to be my first book. It's written about a motorcycle trip I took from Berlin to the South Shore of Crete in 1972 while I was awaiting the draft call during the Vietnam period. And a friend of mine invited me to come over and stay in a commune in Berlin, and I did. And all I can say is things happened. I bought a motorcycle, and that was quite a ride. So that's the essence of the story. A lot of interesting characters I met, and adventures happened.
Well, thank you, Tim. You know, your title of your book sounds very profound. Can you share with us the significance of the title, Driving Toward Destiny?
Well, yeah, okay. One of the things that I had to face when I got into the commune was I had not had a lover before. And when I was in the commune, I met a French woman who was 14 years older than I was. And she was sort of down and out a little bit. She was acting as a bartender in Berlin, and everybody was trying to hit on her because she was really a pretty girl. And I sort of kept hands off, and she liked that. And as a result, we got together, and we spent about 3 months together in Berlin. And when we were talking one day, she said that she had gone to the South Shore of Crete when she was young, and she felt that there was a mystical presence there. Crete is the most ancient part of the Greek culture, where the goddess Rhea came from 6,000 years ago. And some Greeks still believe in the presence of Rhea there. And she said to me, "You should go to the South Shore of Crete where I'd gone, because I'm telling you, I think something is waiting for you there." And when I first heard it, I went, I don't know about that. But what happened was, after I bought the motorcycle, things fell apart at the commune, and I found myself on the road, and I didn't really have any place to go. So I said, I'm going to go to the South Shore of Crete. And it was quite a trip getting there. Let me tell you, the mountains of southern Yugoslavia were really something to drive through. Not ever having driven a major motorcycle before, I bought a BMW. And into Greece and Athens, where I met some really neat people, and then across to Crete. And in Crete, I met, on the South Shore of Crete, in a little town there was somebody there who was sort of waiting for me, I think, and it was special. And I think that my girl was right, and that's what my destiny was.
I love it. That's a pretty cool story for someone that so young during the time.
It didn't just sort of end there. This is a rather long book, and because the two of us couldn't stay together, I had to go back with my motorcycle, and this girl had to go back. We were both Americans. She was over there for the same reason that I was. We were under pressure from our parents, and she wasn't under pressure from the draft, of course, but I went home and I told her, as soon as I get home, I'm going to call you when you get back. And she was under pressure her mother wanted her to get married right away. I mean, have babies, and she didn't want to do that. So when I got back, I called her and we met up, and well, that's how things worked out.
Well, thank you for sharing that story, Tim. Can you share a snippet that isn't in the blurb or excerpt?
Oh, sure. We got one here. One of the neat things about driving on a bike is that you meet up with people, and it's easy to stop. And in this case, I went to what is known as a Gasthof. It's an inn in Germany, and the owners of the inn were, one of the owners, the husband was a former German motorcycle rider in World War II. And he told his story about having been in Crete himself, fighting in Crete. That was savage fighting in Crete. The British were trying to keep the Germans out, but the Germans finally overran them. And he lost a lot of friends there, and it was a very sad story for him. But what he did do was, he found himself a motorcycle like the one he was riding in Crete, and he restored it. And he decided, while I was at his Gasthof the next day, that he would take a 2-hour ride with me through the Bavarian National Forest, which bordered along Czechoslovakia. And we went down to the Danube together, and we had lunch, and he spoke to me. And I can tell you what we were talking about. He said, "It was a beautiful ride." I said, "Yes, but I will go a little faster on the way back. I want to be home before dark, and more speed will remind me of my youth." Ha ha ha, he said. I smiled. Speed was one of the things youth was all about. I certainly like to speed in cars, but why? With speed, you just got from one place to where you didn't know what was going on to another where you didn't know what was going on, only faster. What was the point? And I was always speeding. My car was just an extension of my thought process. I wanted to get away from uncertain ground as fast as possible, but never could find the solid ground. While I was driving, I was in control of the mode of transport, but when I arrived, I always found that I had found nothing new. And then I'll go on and say, he said, "You're having some deep thoughts." Yeah, I guess so. I was thinking that I've been traveling a lot, especially since I got out of college last year. I'm looking for some set of answers about life, but I'm not sure if I even know the right questions. I thought if I came over to Europe, I might find a new perspective and new answers about life, like who I am and what my place in the world is. I read Siddhartha, which was written by Hermann Hesse, who was a German, but I didn't get it all because he wrote about Eastern philosophy. Do you know what I mean? I had the feeling that I had gone too far, spilling my innermost thoughts to a guy I'd only known for less than 24 hours. Hans turned to look at the river with the faraway look in his eyes from last evening. He continued to watch the water move with its unending force, sometimes revealing its strength with a swirl or an eddy. Finally, he said, "Last evening I told you something of my youth, which was directed at every turn by the Nazi state. My brothers and sisters in the Hitler Youth pledged our lives to Hitler. By the time I was your age, my comrades in the paratroops were dying for Hitler, but we were also fighting to save ourselves. We were not individuals with time to think of such questions. We did what the state told us and did not question. Of course, we look back now and see that we should have questioned many things, but then it was not possible. What you speak of is philosophy, which I missed in my youth. I came to it later in life, which may be better because it is profound and requires experience and understanding. There was a man who lived in Constantinople in the 6th century, a general named Boethius, who fell from grace and was imprisoned and executed. While he was in prison, he wrote The Consolation of Philosophy, in which he said that suffering was a necessary step in forming one's own philosophy. That spoke to me. And I have read Kant, Schopenhauer, and Hegel. And yes, I have also read Hess. And I have lived through good times and terrible days. And I have found a philosophy for myself. He looked me straight in the eye. So I know very well what you were talking about. He made me feel quite small as he said this, but he did not say it unkindly.
Wow, that's very powerful. Thank you for sharing that. I know it took a while for you to write the book, and it took real time, the effort you put into the book. Does one of the main characters hold a special place in your heart? And if so, why?
Well, that's a good question. Some of these characters, I was on my own in Europe the first time, a long way from home and under pressure. I have to say, I think that Ava helped me sort of loosen up and expand my horizons in, mental and physical ways. But people like Hans was just there for a moment, with the words he said were important to me. I met other people in Greece who were very interesting and had other things to say. And in the end, I met someone on the South Shore of Crete who, we just sort of meshed together. And her name was Kara, and she became really the focus of my attention. That was at the end of the book, but we got a lot said at the same time.
Well, thank you. Now, what was your inspiration to write the story, Driving Toward Destiny?
Well, like I said, all right, I took the motorcycle trip myself, so that when you see Driving Toward Destiny, what you're looking at is 6 months out of my life when I was 22, 23 years old. And I didn't write it then. I wrote it 50 years later. How could I do that and make it sort of accurate and make it real? Well, the damn thing is, excuse my language, but the amazing thing is that I kept the road maps from the route that I took. And when I decided I wanted to write a book, I spread the maps out on my bed and I traced the route with a marker. And I knew exactly where I had been. And from looking at those maps and remembering all the names of the towns and places and seeing the mountains and everything else, it wasn't hard to reconstruct, my entire adventure. And that was the inspiration for doing it. I've always wanted to be a writer. And one of the things that stopped me was my parents said, "No, you'd never be a writer. You'll starve. You have to make money." And you hear this too much from people. If you really want to do it, go do it. Well, I didn't back then, and I really sort of suffered in corporate America for 40 years. And I didn't take my own advice, but here it is, and I'm trying to make amends.
Well, thank you. Maybe that was part of your destiny, where you would go through all that experience, and then now you get to share it with people.
Yeah.
And that advice so they can do better, and not go through the same mistakes that you probably did.
Absolutely. If you're gonna start out in life, make sure that you are starting from a place that you know in your heart is something that you want to do. Don't just get stuffed into something. It won't work. You'll quit. sooner or later, or, things are changing nowadays. And a lot of young people now are saying, wait a minute, I don't like this job. And there's a lot of people leaving work, which I'm really delighted to hear, because, the old system isn't, grabbing them and holding them anymore. Everybody's got to make money, but, they're maybe making choices better, which is great.
Well, I think because it comes from people like you who've gone through things that this generation hasn't, and are helping them to make better decisions now compared to decisions that were kind of force-fed to maybe your generation, where parents always dictated what you had to do. And now you have parents like you who now know how that felt and want to do something different for their kids. So
my kids have chosen their paths, and they're having a great time. They really are. I mean, my son has two little girls who are absolutely amazing, and couldn't be better.
And that alone should be good enough for you, because that means that you've already fulfilled one of your destinies, is to be the best parent that you can and give them the life that you probably didn't have. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Can you share with us what the journey was like writing Driving Toward Destiny?
Oh, well, I'd wanted to be a writer all my life, and it was all bottled up inside of me. And I started out, and I didn't know, I have a master's in English, and I've read hundreds of books, but I never really sat down to analyze what it was that makes a satisfying story for a reader. Okay? There has to be a path that the book itself takes. It starts off here, it climaxes, and it follows off like that. That's called Freytag's pyramid, and it was discovered by a German in 1867, and he just described this. And anybody who wants to start writing books should start there, Freytag's pyramid. And there are a lot of books that will refer to it. I could give a list of books here that I went to, but they're out there. But a good book will have reference to Freytag's pyramid, and I found that, fortunately, and that allowed me to lay the story out, not just on the maps, but have a starting point, a climax of the action, and then a denouement, as it's called, where the action falls off and the reader sees where the book has been and is tailing off, and the story is ended satisfactorily.
All right. And I know you were already talking about that you've always wanted to be a writer, but what really pushed you to be inspired to become an author?
Well, I finally retired. I'd worked in corporate America. My last 8 years, I worked for the United States government, which was an interesting job, a little slow paced, but I was getting older, so I didn't care so much about that. Then came time to finish off my career. And when I did, of course, you've got to have something to do when you retire. Otherwise, you just collapse into yourself. I know people who've done that, and it is no good. And so I had projected myself into being a writer, and I started grabbing these books. For instance, I started with Aristotle's Poetics, if you want to know the truth, and aspects of the novel by E.M. Forster. How to Write a Damn Good Novel by James N. Fry was a good book. The Writer's Journey by Christopher Vogler and others. And then I found Freytag's pyramid, and I was ready. And I don't type very well, so I wrote this book by hand on paper. And before I knew it, I had written over 200,000 words, which is way too many words for a book to be published. So I chopped it down as far as I could, and I still had 150,000, and that put me into self-publishing territory. What I found out about that is that, yes, the self-publishers will help you. They will help you edit. Of course, they'll bind the book, they'll get the ISBN number, they'll do all of this and create, that. And that's what I needed. It will cost you money. And then you have to market it. And so that's probably the hardest part. You have got to get those Amazon reviews, and you have to get out there, have to get books in hands, and that's the stage I'm at now. I've started writing a second book, so I won't go crazy watching the Amazon reviews come in one by one. But that's about the story there. I had to do something, and writing was what I always wanted to.
Well, I'm glad you started writing, because I think you have a good story to tell people. Now, there are a lot of people reading books, and a lot of people have probably read your book. How do you deal with literary criticism?
Well, okay. Like I said, I've read a lot of books, and some of them I don't like. I put them down. Why? If there's something that's missing, it's not getting into the action fast enough. You pick up a book by somebody like Alexander Dumas, the Three Musketeers, boom, you're right in the action, which is so cool, and that's the way I started my book, get right into it. And I had heard from an agent that I was not doing that. The first 10 or 12 pages were fluff. He said, get rid of that. What do you want that for? I said, yeah, you know what? You're right. So from then on, if a professional said something to me, I would listen, because they really sort of know what's going on. This book was edited by my publisher. I had a content edit done. I write pretty well, so it wasn't chopped up in pieces, but they made a good number of suggestions, and I took most of them, or if not all of them, because they're the professionals. It's going to make it better. Well, fine. I'm a rookie. I'm a new guy. Let's get it done.
Well,
so I'm not hurt. No.
Yep, you shouldn't. It's to help you become a better writer.
Yeah.
Just like having a parent that wants you to become a better person. So that's good advice.
Yeah.
How do you see your book, Driving Toward Destiny, 5 years from now?
Well, I have hopes. That's the best thing I can say. I would like to see it picked up by more people. I'd like to see, I'm using marketing firms to help me, agencies to help me get it spread out. I would like to have more reviews on it, professional reviews of it. And really what I'd like to see is I'd like to see it translated, because the book is written about a trip through Europe. And I think people went from Germany and I don't know what Greece, but I don't know how you translate into Greece, but Greek, but there's parts of it in France as well. So I would like to see it go international, because I think there's sales over there too. But primarily, I think that the younger generation here should hear what happened. is this their father's book or their grandfather's book? I don't know. But still, the times in 1972, there were a lot of screaming going on out in the streets. People hated Nixon. There was, and then 58,000 young men were killed in Vietnam for nothing. That's what happened. And if I was afraid of the draft, I had a damn good reason for being afraid of it. We were in a mess back then, and this story tells a little bit about that. And trying to find yourself, that's another part of it. Who am I, and what is my path in life? And at the end of the book, he finds a path, the hero.
And that's what people want to hear. Like, after all these heartaches, after all the challenges, where does this person end up? Like, there's always, a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
You can't change history, right? So it's good that you wrote about the book. So people like me that probably weren't there during that time have a glimpse of how it really was, and gives you a better understanding of how much better you have life right now. So.
Well, it's not just that. I mean, you shouldn't be, if you're a young person and you're 20 or 22 or whatever you are, and if you went to college or didn't, you shouldn't be sitting on a couch playing video games. You're going nowhere. I'm sorry. I mean, if you get to be an esports champion and are making $300,000 a year doing that, fine. But probably won't do that for more than 10 years, because somebody's going to come along and knock you off your throne there, So you've got to go out and find what is going to be best for you in the long run. And you got to know who you are in order to do that. Those are the two questions you got to answer for yourself. Who are you, and what is your path in life?
I like that. It reminds me of a quote that I heard: the two important days of your life is the first one is the day you were born, and the day you find out why. So
good. Yeah. So, very good. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Tim. Now I'm going down to my last few questions, but I really want to know, what advice would you give a new writer, someone just starting out?
Well, I mean, you have to have a passion for writing. Okay. I've sat in writing groups with college kids, at my age, and they're sort of stumbling along, trying to write poetry or whatever it is, and they don't really have a foundation for what they're doing. They're just writing, and I think that you have to have some sort of perspective on life to make it solid, to have something to work off of. The older you get, I think the easier it gets, because you have more experience behind you. Somebody who's 20 years old, back in the old days, Hemingway and F. Scott Fitzgerald and those people, Hemingway was actually a newspaper reporter, so he had a lot of experience writing by the time he was 25. Fitzgerald was a socialite, and he wrote about the cocktail parties he went to and that sort of thing. I'm one of my favorite categories of book to read is the classics. You can read Alexander Dumas, you can read Charles Dickens. A Tale of Two Cities is incredible. That's historical fiction. And get into something like that if you know the history. Make it up, make it, spin it out your own way. I can't tell a certain person what type of writing they should do or how to get into it, necessarily. I think that'd be presumptuous of me to do so.
But I think I for me myself, I got some good takeaways from how I could start if I'm ever interested in writing, because I'm a bad writer. But have a good foundation. That was a good takeaway. Good foundation, have a good perspective in life, and some good books that you recommended. I know earlier you were talking about those books. Where should they start reading? Like what books did you want to recommend to people that they start reading for them to become a good writer?
Well, it depends on what age you are. When I went to school, we were given a broad range of books to read in history, in English. We actually had a course called geography, and you learned about the world that way. I still read the National Geographic, which is a fascinating magazine because it takes you all over the world in pictures. It's wonderful. Particular books, there are just so many. In my living room and in the other rooms, there are bookshelves full of books. I'm not going to start pulling them off and naming them for you. I will name you a couple of my favorites, and one of them is A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. Another one would be A Farewell to Arms by Ernest Hemingway. What's another one? A historical drama. What was it called? The Killer Angels, a Civil War drama. You know that one? Won the Pulitzer Prize by, can't remember his name, but his son took it up. He died, the man who wrote that, and he wrote 4 other books in the same genre, and he's won prizes. But The Killer Angels was a fabulous book about the Battle of Gettysburg. The author projected himself into the Battle of Gettysburg, and he had himself talking to the generals and the soldiers and watching the movements of troops and with maps and everything. It was just a great book. I think he was a college professor, so he had access to all of that. But that was a great, but that's a range of books right there. I mean, you pick them. There are something like, I heard that there are something like 10,000 new books coming out every month in this country right now. A lot of choice.
Well, thank you for your recommendations. Now, where can readers purchase your books?
My book can be purchased, of course, on Amazon, on Barnes & Noble, and any independent bookstore. They'll order it for you.
Perfect.
Just go in with the title.
And if they wanted to find more about you and your books or books that you plan on writing in the future, where would they go?
My website is drivingtowarddestiny.com. I have some things in there about me. This video is going to go in there too. I will be adding to that as we go forward. So I have that.
Well, thank you, Tim. And lastly, how's your experience working with Bookmark Alliance?
Oh, I've found that, book marketers can be aggressive. They can be not necessarily so truthful because they want to sell their services. So they'll tell you, I can get you a bestseller. I can make you a bestseller. Or I can get you into a movie deal, this sort of thing. And it's not maybe quite the truth. I have found that the people I've worked with at Bookmark Alliance have been saying, you've got a good book. Okay, I think I got a good book. I'll believe that. And we will market it for you. We will take you to book fairs. We will put you in our store and we will promote you and we will do what we can. And if things work out, we'll see what happens. And that's about what you should be listening to, okay? And when I hear that from Bookmark Alliance, I say, okay, that makes sense. It's gonna cost some money, but I'll believe that. And I need the marketing help, and I'll go with Bookmark Alliance.
Well, thank you, Tim. Really appreciate that. This was a great interview. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope we can do this again.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time. You were a great interviewer. I appreciate it.